Hello everyone, and welcome to the March 2018 update of the Power BI desktop. As always, we have lots of exciting features to walk you through today, and we will of course start with the reporting features. Our biggest announcement for this month is that we are now previewing a feature that we're calling Report Page Tooltips. And this feature is all around being able to completely customize what you're seeing in your tooltip, including being able to add as many visuals as you want that you will then see on hover with, of course, all of the filter context flowing through to that tooltip. So let me walk you through how to use this feature. So like I said, this feature is a preview, so the first thing you're going to have to do is go turn it on under File, Options and Settings, Options, and then under the preview features, you'll see an option for Report Page Tooltips. And so once you've turned the preview feature on, what you're going to want to do is you're going to first design what you want your tooltip to look like. I've already pre-done that with two different tooltips right here. And whenever you're designing these tooltips, we recommend that you pick something small since in terms of report page size, since it's meant to be used as a tooltip. And to help with that, in the page size card of the formatting pane, we're giving you a new tooltip size option to use. You don't have to use it though. You can use any of the predefined page sizes, including a custom size that you configure, but we do give you a good starting place with our tooltip size page. We also recommend, as you are setting up your tooltips, to go to the View tab and make sure that you're viewing your page as actual size. Otherwise, if you're using fit to page, for example, with the small page size, it will look massive and everything will be blown up. It's harder to design that way, so we recommend just making sure your page view is switched over to actual size. Once you've designed what you want your tooltip to look like, the next thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to let us know that this is a tooltip page. To do that, you can go under Page Information, and right next to the Q&A toggle that we have, there's also a tooltip toggle. So you're going to want to turn that on. And so I'll do that for both of my tooltips. And now you're going to want to assign this tooltip to charts, so that we can know which charts you want this tooltip to show for on hover. Now there's two ways that you can link a tooltip to a chart, and both are useful for different scenarios. So the first one I'm going to talk about is similar to your experience you have right now for drill through, where you're tying this page to a field. And so the idea is that you could put in any field, category, measure, numeric column, and anywhere that field is being used in your report, this tooltip will show up. So, for example, I want this tooltip to show up anywhere I'm using sales amount in my report. So I'm going to drag it over to this tooltip fields bucket. And this bucket is going to show up only whenever you have that toggle on. So you won't see it until you go and turn that tooltip page toggle on in the formatting pane. Once you do that, you can drag your field into here, like I did. And now, whenever I go to my overview page, where I have lots of charts using sales amount, I can just hover over a bar, and my page shows up. And so you can see both this chart and this bar chart here are both using that same tooltip because they both are using sales amount in the chart. So this is a really convenient way to set up one tooltip and have it automatically being applied everywhere in your report with just one simple drag of a field. And like I said, it's very similar to drill through, so you'll want to use it in cases where you designed this report for a category you want to see everywhere, or a measure that you're using frequently in all your charts, like this is my tooltip for sales, like I did. The other way that you can assign a tooltip to a chart is by manually assigning it. So for example, I designed this tooltip to be used specifically for this scatter chart. I wanted this tooltip to have both the brand and the brand and class information, and then some extra stuff specifically for that scatter chart. And so instead of using the tooltip fields bucket, I'm not going to drop anything in there. I'm going to go over to the chart that I want to use it for, and in the formatting pane, you'll see that we now have this tooltip bucket. Whenever I open this, you can see that I can do a couple of things. One, I can change it from this auto default experience that we have, and that's what enables that automatic tie a field to the chart that I just demonstrated, is this auto setting. Instead, I can assign a specific page. And in this drop-down, I'll see all of the tooltip pages that I have within my report. And so I'll pick the brand and class tooltip. And now whenever I hover over this chart, I see that tooltip that I had designed. And so this is really useful when you design a tooltip for a very specific purpose. These tooltips, whenever you're hovering over in the chart, obviously just like our default tooltips, all of the filter context is going to be flowing through into this tooltip that you are seeing. So for example, whenever I'm hovering over this bar, and I am, let's say, cross-highlighting by deluxe here, you can see when I'm hovering over this bar that my tooltip is taking in that deluxe cross-highlight as well. So you can see both the cross-highlighted value in the chart through my data label and the sales amount in the tooltip itself are matching because they both are taking in that filter. So all of the slicers, all of the filters, all the cross-highlighting, all of the filter context that's affecting the data that you see in this bar, that is being flowed through to the tooltip page as well, just like our default tooltips have all of that filter context taken in. Another thing you can do in this tooltip card is that if you say you're using that automatic linking and you want it to happen in most of your charts, but there's just one where it doesn't make sense, and you want to go back to the default Power BI tooltip, we do let you turn report page tooltips off through this toggle, and you will automatically go back even if there is a tooltip that could potentially be used, a report page tooltip. We will still force ourselves back to the Power BI's default tooltip if you change this toggle to off. As I mentioned, report page tooltips are in preview, so there are some things you should be aware of. The main one is the fact that right now, report page tooltips do not work in embedded scenarios. So you're going to embed your report in an app or in or use publish to web. You will not get the report page tooltips. Instead, we're gonna fall back to the default Power BI tooltips. If you do want to use our report page tooltips and still publish to web, you can still take advantage of, even though you are using a report page for your tooltip, you can still drag other things into this bucket. And while you won't see them when we're using the report page tooltip, of course, because where would we show them? Whenever we fall back to the default tooltip in the embedded environments, those fields will still be used. So you can design both the default tooltip that we use embedded and in your report page tooltip that would be used in desktop and service. Mobile, if you are using mobile reports, we also won't be showing the report page tooltips there. We'll be falling back to the default Power BI tooltip. Make sure for this feature to read our documentation so that you can be aware of any other limitations that exist during our preview period as well. So make sure to give this feature a try. We're really excited about it, and we think it's going to be a really powerful feature that will let you do a lot of really cool things just on hover of your report. And make sure to give us any feedback you have while we're in preview period. Back in October, we released a preview of our bookmarking feature. Bookmarking is all around being able to save an interesting state of your report for later. So your state can include things like what's visible on your page and what's not, what kind of filters and cross-highlighting have you applied, slicer values, things like that. Then you could use those bookmarks later for things like telling a story, easy access back to those interesting insights you found, or even using them as navigation elements by triggering them off of shapes and images. Based off of the feedback we got on the bookmarking feature, we made some improvements to it in December as well to enable even more flexibility. And now this month, we are choosing to make this feature generally available. So that means you no longer have to turn on the preview feature switch in the desktop, and you also no longer have to start your first bookmark per report in the desktop. While I was in preview, the very first bookmark had to be made in the desktop, and then you could start using the service to add more bookmarks. Now you can start, assuming you can edit the report, you can start using bookmarking from scratch in the Power BI service as well. We are also now supporting custom visuals as well as part of bookmarking. So by the point of this video, all, or at least most, of the Microsoft made custom visuals will be supporting cross-highlighting and filtering in our bookmarks. And other custom visual authors will be adding support as well as we go along. They are now able to support bookmarking. Sometimes it requires some changes on their side, so that will be coming as fast as possible, but it will take a little bit of time for everything to have full support. But you should see, especially a lot of the more used custom visuals like the chiclet slicer, you'll start seeing those work with bookmarking as well now that we're making it generally available. Next up is our formatting feature for this month. As you probably noticed, we like to usually release at least one formatting improvement per month. This month, we are updating our table and matrix visuals to let you format the display units in precision for a given field within a table or matrix. So let me show you how to do that. So in my report, I'm going to go to this page, which has a table. And what I want to do is I want to display, instead of the entire value, I want to be able to put the K to represent thousands in this table. So I can now do that in the formatting pane. Under field formatting, I can pick that sales amount column. And I now have the display unit options where I can switch from none to thousands. I can also control now how many decimal points I want to show. So it's auto by default, but I can, for example, force it down to just 1, or it's more than 2 as well. So I can pick what I want for both my decimal places and the display units. So this is bringing the table and matrix up to par with data labels in our charts, which have already supported picking a decimal and the number of decimal places and also the display units. We also have a feature that will be useful whenever you are expecting people to be consuming your report, but not really interacting with it a whole lot, especially in publish to web scenarios. The visual header, that little bar that shows up on the top that has the drill icons, pinning, things like that, it can be very distracting in those cases where people are not actually going to be drilling or pinning. They're just going to be consuming your report because the bar flashes and the icons show, and it just doesn't look really nice in those cases, and it's not useful. So we're giving you a way to turn that off whenever you're in reading mode for a report. So the toggle to do this is going to be in the desktop. You will find it in File, Options and Settings, Options, and in this Report Settings tab, you have this new option called Visual Options, and under there you'll see the Hide the Visual Header in Reading View. It's not checked by default. I had pre-checked this. So if you don't want that visual top bar, you check this box and hit OK. You'll still see it in the desktop because you're always in editing mode in the desktop, and we always will show this bar for you in editing mode. But if I move to the Power BI service, you'll see that the top bar does not show up. The icons are not there when I hover or click. They are just not available. And so this makes the report look a whole lot more professional, and assuming my users are not going to be interacting and drilling, that's not what I'm intending them to do, that bar wasn't as useful anyways. You can still do all the things we enabled with the right-click menu. So like if you do have drill, you'd see it here. You can go to show data, see records, things like that. You still have access to the right-click menu. You just don't see that top bar anymore. And so this will be true for any time you're in reading mode, whether it's in the service or if you publish it to web and you're going to be embedding it in a web page. And if you have that switch on in the desktop for that specific report, anytime it's being purely consumed, you won't have that top bar. We've also made some improvements to where our default visual placement is going to be whenever you're creating your reports. So anytime you check a box in the field list, or you're going to click the icon in the visualization pane to insert a new visual, we're going to be a whole lot smarter about where we're placing that visual. So we're going to take into consideration where your other charts are and their sizes, and based off of that, make the best, what we feel like is the best default size and position for the chart based off of what we can know. And of course, you can still adjust it and move it around and resize it, but hopefully the default experience will be a lot better. So like for example, let's just say I didn't have the scatter here and I wanted to make it. So when I insert this, you'll see that we were smart and we could tell like, oh, there's a one that goes along here, there's another visual that aligns to the top of it. So what you're probably going to want is you're going to want another one to fill in the rest of that gap. Next up is our typical section on custom visuals. Mapbox is a location platform, and they provide maps, search, and navigation tools that developers can put together to build their own custom applications. And in Power BI's case, that means that they were able to, using their APIs, build out a Mapbox custom visual. And so now, if you have a Mapbox account in your own maps on Mapbox, you're able to use those in your Power BI dashboard. And they have 5 key benefits that they say you can get by using their custom visual in Power BI. The first is that you can have map layers. So they let you create heat maps, the circles, bubbles of different sizes, and you can actually create cluster aggregations as well. And you're able to use all of those all in one map visual through adding different layers of the different types of maps at different zoom levels. Their map visual is also very performant, so they perform very fast, going all the way up to the data point limit that we have for all custom visuals. They are very performant with that limit. They have a lot of different formatting features for these maps. They let you choose between 8 different map styles that are they designed for data visualization. You can control all the little details like color, shapes, labels, opacity of the different layers. You have full control over how you want your map to look. So much so that you can even create your own custom map styles. So if you have shape files or any other geospatial data, you can use Mapbox Studio to take that map data and create your own custom map. And the 5th one is again, bringing up the cluster aggregations. It's a really powerful feature that lets you understand your geographical trends much beyond just density, so you can look at like the sums, the min, max, and average within these clusters that are being formed on your map. It's a really powerful feature. So let me show you a demo of a Mapbox map. So this report is showing earthquake data, and this is the Mapbox map on the right here. And you can see I'm using the clustering aggregations here, and as I zoom in, you can see that also demonstrates the layers as well. So when I was a little more zoomed out, it clustered them and showed me the biggest magnitude of earthquakes in that region. And then as I zoom in, we actually go into the individual locations with bubble sizes for the number of earthquakes that have happened at that specific longitude and latitude. This visual is also responsive to things like cross-highlighting. So if I cross-highlight to United States, I can see all of the geographical data for the United States specifically. And again, those layers apply. So as I zoom in, you can see the clusters changing, and eventually it will break out into individual data points. To show you a different demo of the Mapbox visual, you can see this example has a different style for the map itself, and it also is using a heat map instead of that clustering aggregations. You can see there's a heat map to show you the density of cycling accidents in New York. And again, it can show off the different layers. As I zoom, it gets more refined, and eventually it will break down into individual bubbles, where the size of the bubble is based off of the measure. So this visual, you can see from these two examples, there's lots of things you can do with it. It's highly formattable. They have a lot of things in the formatting pane itself, so you can turn on the circles, the heat maps, and the clustering on and off for the map, and you can set controls like for the example, the heat map, the intensity, the opacity, the colors you want to use, and you can also set the zoom level for when you want us to use that layer, or when you want a Mapbox to use that layer. The way the Mapbox visual is being licensed is that the author will need to have the report will need to have a Mapbox account, which you can sign up for on their site. There is a free account within a certain number of views, and you'll be able to take an access token and you'll put it in here in the map, and then the map will start working for you. This means that consumers of your report will not need to have a license since it's put into the formatting pane as part of the visual. No consumers will need to have a license. It's all just the creator of the report. This visual is in preview, so there are some limitations. The main one being that right now the visual will only work in the desktop and on Chrome and Firefox browsers. Hopefully you can tell from this very short demo that this visual is really powerful, and if you do a lot of mapping in your reports, I definitely recommend you give it a try, and make sure to leave them any feedback so that they can know what else features to add during the preview of the Mapbox visual. The user list by CloudScope visual is all around being able to display information about users or organizations in a really visually appealing fashion. So you can see that there is both a compact view and expanded view, and for each different attribute, so person, organization, whatever you're trying to show information about, you'll have things like images, in this case followers and tweets. You can have URLs, text, anything you want to associate with that person is in each of these little cards. And you can, like I said, there is a very compact view that gives you just like the bare minimum information, and there's also an expanded view that has this like nice background image, and you can see it actually almost has like if you use Twitter, it looks kind of similar to Twitter's experience. Another visual by CloudScope, the timeline visual, is all around being able to show social media information for a given user or account. So you can see here there are a couple of different experiences. There's like the base experience that can show things like for a bunch of tweets or retweets, comments, things like that, all the social media stuff, replies, and it's a very compact, basic timeline view. And they also have a full timeline-like experience similar to what you would actually see if you were looking on Twitter on your phone. You have like the images, and you can kind of tell the difference between the tweets and the replies and the retweets, and you can see the likes in a nice Twitter-like fashion. To use this one, you do have to use this tweet JSON format, which you can learn more about on their website. The Kpi Chart by Equilon is our next visual, and this visual is very similar to a combo chart, but with the additional feature of being able to create color bands in the background that are either static or dynamic to help you know for any given point if it's meeting goals or not. So you can see in their sample here that there is both, like I said, a combo chart, so it has a bar and a line, and there's also these bands that you can see. They go from green to red, and to give you a good idea of for any given data point, you can see here like this data point, I know, okay, it's in a good spot because it's in the green, whereas, this bar, it's in the red, that's bad. And you can choose to pick these bands either through the formatting pane statically, so you can set up what colors you want to use and the ranges on the axis for each of the up to 5 regions, or you can use the formatting pane to dynamically set those as well. So as it gets filtered or cross-highlighted, those ranges can update based off of measures that you create. So this is a really good visual if you like using our combo chart, but you really need that extra target information, this is a really good visual to use for that. The R data table visual is an R custom visual that is a table-like experience with a lot of the features that a lot of people love to have in Excel, like searching and filtering right on the table. It's really powerful and really cool, so let me demonstrate the visual. So you can see here, I'm looking at it in the Power BI service. You can use it on the desktop too, of course, as long as you have the required R packages installed. And what you can see here is, of course, a nice table layout. And you can choose to, just by clicking right under the header, choose to filter down things. So like if I want to filter the bait to a believer, or if I'm really cool and I want to shoot the fish with an arrow, I'm assuming that's shooting with an arrow. I don't actually know anything about fishing, but so I can filter down my values, or I can even start typing and it will filter down to just the things that I'm typing for. If I want to have a teardrop, you can click that. And the nice little pills as you add the filter, so it's really easy to just remove them afterwards. And of course you can filter as many values for each of the different columns. There's also a search. So for example, if I just wanted to look at rows that had Lake Erie in it, I could search for that and everything gets filtered down just to the things for me to look at that are from Lake Erie. You can of course sort, so that's what these little icons here are used for. You can choose to sort by both ascending and descending for a given column. And you can also choose, because it's done through pageation, you can see here at the bottom you can flip between page 1 and 238. You can choose how many entries you want to see per page. So if I want to change it to 50, now I have 50 here per page, and you can see there's less pages now because I have 50 entries per page. So if you are using our table and matrix and you're running into some of these limitations, this is a really good visual to try out and take advantage of all these nice things like on-object filtering and searching. Next up is another R custom visual, which is Outlier Detection. And so this visual is all around being able to really quickly find different outliers in your data and visualize them really effectively. And it really shows off the analytics power of R, the language. So you can see here, this visual lets you find outliers based off of one of 5 different methods. So you can see here's an example of finding some outliers based off of z-score or IQR, or even being able to set your own manual thresholds. And so you can try out each of the different methods to detect the outliers and see what outliers it finds and figure out which method works best for your data. And then once you've tried out each of the different methods and picked one, you can then pick how you want to visualize it. So there are 3 different visualization types you can use in this R custom visual as well. So you can choose to visualize it as a scatter plot, a box plot, or a density chart. And for each of those, you can choose to visualize the entire data or visualize the scores as well. So this is a really powerful R custom visual that, like I said, takes advantage of the R language powerful analytics. So if this is something you're interested in, finding outliers in your data, this is a good visual to try. Next up are 3 different visuals by MAQ software, the first of which is the Data Insights visual. And this visual is really cool because it lets you, right in the visual, control a lot of the different things. You can control the color, the label color, you can change around what you want to show in your X and Y axis, you can change the type between a column chart, a bar chart, a table, or a brick chart. And you can also additionally do things like bin the chart as well. So I want to bin by, say, region. And so now I'm seeing for each region all of the cities and profit within that region. So it's a really fun visual. It lets you change a lot of things on the fly. It lets you break things down, see different forms of the same data, and that's really helpful because it allows you to, a lot of times depending on how you visualize things, you can find different insights in the data. So very cool visual, very fun to play with, definitely recommend it. The next visual is our custom visual, the Dumbell Chart. And the Dumbell Chart is all around being able to visualize the relative positions between 2 points. So for example, for each of these different manufacturers, we're able to see between 2 years what are the different values. So in 2014 it was 1081, and then all the way up in 2016 it went all the way up to 6012. And so I'm able to compare for each of these how they changed between those two times, and get a good feel for the based off of the distance how much growth or decline has occurred. The last custom visual is clustering using optics. So this is another R custom visual, the third one for this month, and it's a really cool visual that lets you use again, R is a really powerful language, and so the custom visuals that are made with R usually are very advanced in terms of analytics, and this one's no exception. It lets you see clustering in it lets you create these different clusters in your data, and it lets you do things like, for example, this one's showing you a hierarchy of the clusters, whereas this one helps you see outliers. So you can see, here's a cluster and all the outliers for around that cluster, and here's another cluster and the outliers around it. And so you're able to, using this one visual, find clusters through 2 different methods, and that will help you find different insights in your data when you try each of them out. Next on our list is the data connectivity section. And the first improvement we have here is that we have some major improvements to our Visual Studio Team Services connector. Our previous connector was pulling data from the VSTS operational data, and it was resulting in a not optimal experience. It wasn't performing up to what we would put as our standards, and it took a lot of understanding of the data to be able to make some simple reports. So this new connector is a complete revamp of that. It pulls aggregated data from the VSTS analytics service, and this makes everything much more performant and much easier to create your reports as well. We also have 2 separate SAP HANA connector enhancements. The first is that we are now making our direct query multidimensional support for this connector generally available. So we previewed it last month, and a few weeks ago we enabled it to work with the Power BI service for the connector. So that means it would work well with the February update to the on-premise gateway. And now we're proud to announce that it's now generally available to use. You no longer need to turn on the preview feature to use this new version of the connector. Of course, you can still use, if you want to, you can opt into the relational connector. That was the previous experience. If you liked that, you can still use that through our options dialog. The other enhancement for the SAP HANA connector is an SSL certificate validation support. So in this release, we've enhanced support for when you're connecting to servers with SSL encryption by surfacing the SSL certificate validation options in the Power BI desktop credentials prop. We don't have support for this quite yet with the Power BI service via the gateway, but that will be within one of the next few updates of the gateway, so watch out for that. We also are making 2 of our other connectors generally available this month as well. It's a big month for GAing our connectors. The first one is SAP BW Direct Query that has been in a beta feature for a few months now, and this month we're choosing to make it generally available. The Azure Analysis Services connector is also now generally available. For all of these connectors that are GAing this month, thank you for all the great feedback that you've given us while they were in preview and beta, and we still continue to keep using them and giving us good feedback. Last on our list are 2 error-related features that we're adding. First is that we are improving our error reporting for the desktop. So if you've ever, while using the desktop, hit an exception while using it, hopefully you haven't, but if you have, the process was if you wanted to report it to us, we gave you a button you could click, and it would end up popping up in your email client a bunch of technical details for us to use with debugging, screenshots sometimes, trace files, all the stuff that we use to help figure out what the issue was so we can fix it. And you could send that email to an alias that we had, to an email address that you could send all that information to, and we'd look at it, potentially get back to you, definitely look into how to fix it. And what we've done now is we've changed that process, so now it's done completely within the desktop. So if you do ever hit an error, you will get a dialog with the error message, and if you choose to report it, you'll see a dialog there that will let you see all the stuff that you could potentially send to us, to Microsoft, to help debug the issue. You can always uncheck any of the different options. They have little check boxes to send or not send, and then once you just picked everything out that you want to send, there's a button, and that's all you have to do. You just hit the send button, and we will get that information. A nice thing about this is that to enable this scenario, we have hooked into Windows error reporting, which means you get a Power BI error messages, or the ones you're hitting, are now centralized with all the other Windows error reporting programs as well. So, for example, sometimes you'll see an Office or some other Windows exception that was hit, like something didn't update in the Windows Store. They are all this information is stored centrally. You can search for it in your browser of choice. You can search for Windows error reporting, and you'll be able to find information on this. But there is a place you can go, and you'll see all of the different errors that you've hit, what you sent to us, what you haven't sent to us, and check on that. So it's a really powerful control that you now have over monitoring what things you have hit and what information you have sent us. So that's all the features we have for this month. Make sure to give them all a try and let us know of any feedback you may have on them.